Hello, my name is Tim Gray, and I'm the chairman of the nonprofit World War II Foundation. The World War II Foundation travels the world with the veterans and survivors of the Second World War to chronicle their stories for a global television audience here on PBS. To date, our foundation has produced 20 documentary films that educate, honor, and inspire future generations to ensure the individual stories from World War II are never forgotten. The program you are about to see is specific to the Jewish experience in World War II, from the Holocaust to those Jewish Americans who fought in combat for the United States in both the European and Pacific theaters of war. These soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines fought for America, while many of their own relatives and friends were systematically murdered throughout Western and Eastern Europe by the Nazis. We hope these individual stories will inspire you to want to learn more via PBS regarding the Jewish experience in World War II. Please join us now for a salute to patriotism and perseverance. And welcome back to the program, everybody. We're honored to be joined by someone I've known for several years now and have traveled back to Europe with and gone to various parts of where his life was defined. Israel Arbeiter, who is a Holocaust survivor. And Izzy, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Talk a little bit about what Europe was like in the late 1930s leading into World War II, the atmosphere for someone of the Jewish faith.
Well, as you know, Tim, I was born in Poland. And in the early 30s, as you mentioned, I was a youngster. In September 1st, 1939, when World War II broke out, I was 14 years old. And that's when there was anti-Semitism in Poland, but not to the level of what was in Germany. In fact, we had Jewish people coming in from Germany that were expelled from Germany. But in 1939, I was 14 years old when the German army came in, and behind them was the occupation forces, like the Gestapo, and all kinds of police units. And with them came the Nuremberg laws, which, number one, deprived us of our civil rights. I, as a 14-year-old, was declared a slave and condemned to death for the only crime I have committed, because I was born to Jewish parents. And then this area, the city of Plotzk, that area that we lived in, was included into the Third Reich. It was declared incorporated into the Third Reich, into Germany. And therefore it was declared Judenrein, or free of Jews. And so in 1940, we were ordered to leave the city, or we ordered first to report on the center of the city, which you know where the ghetto was. And from there we were shipped out in trucks, in open trucks, in February of 1940 to the first camp, which was in East Prussia, called Soldau.
Right. And your parents, because we don't have a lot of time, unfortunately, today, your parents and your younger brother were taken to the Treblinka death camp, where they were gassed and cremated. And then you yourself, along your journey of World War II, ended up at Auschwitz. And could you describe the conditions at Auschwitz in a brief amount of time, which is almost impossible to do? Auschwitz-Birkenau, which was the death camp.
Yeah. Well, first we were sent to Starachowice, a camp in Starachowice. And then in 1942, in the middle of the night, without any alarm, or we were ordered to assemble at the marketplace the entire Jewish population of Starovice, and there was a selection. The young by the Gestapo, the young and that were capable of performing slave labor were placed on one side, and the young and the elderly on the other side. I was a teenager. I was never away from my home, from my parents, and I didn't want to be away from them either, although I was selected to go onto the left among the slave laborers and my parents on the right side. So at risking my life, because if you were caught disobeying orders, you could have been shot on the spot. I went back to where my parents were staying, and I said, I don't want to go there. I want to be with my parents. Whatever happens to them, let it happen to me too. And my father realized what's happening here. He said to me and two of my brothers, children, go back over there. And he said, if you survive, remember to carry on with Jewish life and Jewish tradition. Those were the last words that my father said to us. And after that, they were taken away to Treblinka and they were murdered, and we were sent to Auschwitz to perform slave labor. As far as the liberators, Auschwitz, life in Auschwitz was the final solution. At that time, nobody came out from Auschwitz alive. When I arrived in Auschwitz, I mean, with those that were selected for slave labor, the greeting was, from my assessment, you arrived now in, this is not a rose garden. You arrived here in concentration camp Auschwitz, and the only way out of here is through the chimneys, pointing at the chimneys where the smoke and flames were coming out.
Which was to be cremated.
Yeah. And so life there was miserable. I was assigned to work in cleaning toilets, and as far as the soldiers are concerned, the liberators, if I know that if the war would have lasted another 3 months, none of us would have survived. The condition under which we were living, and that the gas chambers that were working day and night, and they were busy. So after about 3 months, none of us will survive. So of course we were hoping that they will come sooner, but they did come and liberated us.
And they're your heroes to this day.
In time, yes. And there was a guild there that, I should say, before, when I was in Camp Starovice, there was a epidemic of typhus, and we were placed, those that were sick had no right to live, because the Germans didn't want to feed those that cannot perform slave labor. And so they were placed, those were sick, in a infirmary. And one night, the chief of Gestapo, by the name of Walter Becker, and the camp commandant, Willy Althoff, came into the camp in the middle of the night, and there were 87 of us sick people in that barrack. 86 were murdered that night by shooting. Only one came out.
Which was you.
Yes, and then, of course, when we saw the American soldiers and the Allied forces came in, especially the Americans, and liberated us, although we were in very, very bad shape. But as you can see, I'm around.
Izzy, thank you so much for joining us.
You're very welcome. Thank you for inviting me, having me here. Tim, it's always a pleasure and an honor.
And welcome back, everybody. We're honored to be joined by two Jewish American veterans of World War II, Mr. Joseph Joel of the 30th Infantry Division, and Mr. Leon Resnick, who is with the Army Combat Engineers. And Mr. Joel, we'll start with you. Tell me a little bit about your role with the 30th Infantry Division and what the higher-ups had you doing.
I joined them. I was a volunteer from North Carolina in the artillery. I joined the 30th Division as a volunteer. Got my infantry training in England. Went over and joined the headquarters company, 120th Regiment. And I worked on the artillery 57 millimeter until we had to give that one up and go into the infantry. We went on many, many excursions. Here, there, we went through France, Belgium, Holland, finally entered Germany. And December 16th, never forget the date, 1944, we were told to saddle up, we're leaving in the morning, Battle of the Bulge.
Leon, tell me about your job with the Combat Engineers. What did you do? What were you responsible for?
I did about everything I was told to do.
You're a good man.
I had no choice.
Yeah.
I was in England, France, Belgium, Germany, Battle of the Bulge. I was wounded in Germany. I received 4 service Bronze Stars.
Briefly describe the conditions during the Battle of the Bulge in Belgium and along the border of Luxembourg and Germany.
Snow, ice, hills.
Horrible conditions.
Yes. So I went out as a bazooka man. That's the nearest thing to an artillery piece.
On the job training, no doubt.
Well, I'll tell you. And I was very fortunate. I went out on different things with them, and we were hemmed down by a group of Germans. We could hear them over a hill, talking. We heard the tanks warming up. I was asked if I wanted to go. I went halfway up the hill with a bazooka. Had somebody carrying the ammunition, and they started a counterattack. I had the group behind me. They had dug in. And I caught the first tank and disabled it. I must have hit the tracks of the tank. And then the second tank came around it and was coming down. I still don't know why they weren't firing their guns or anything, but I did a couple of shots and disabled that one. And they turned around and they did not, we stopped the counterattack.
And you were awarded a Silver Star.
Yes, sir.
That's amazing.
But I was very fortunate.
Leon, what are your memories of the Bulge?
Well, I was in the Belgian Bulge, but I was not in the front line.
But it was still cold and snowing.
It was cold, miserable, terrible.
You're Jewish, you're American, you're fighting in Europe. If you were taken prisoner, if you were wounded and taken prisoner by the Germans, did you probably know what was going to happen to you, considering the atmosphere in Germany towards Jews during World War II? Was there any concern on your end about being captured?
I knew what was going on, but it never entered my mind. We were fighting, we were doing this, we were doing that. Never thought they'd capture me or whatever. I could get hit or whatever. Very fortunate about it.
What about you, Leon?
I also thought that, I never gave it a thought that I would be captured. I just didn't give it a thought.
You weren't worried at all about being Jewish and fighting in Europe?
No, I was not.
Did you have a Star of David on your dog tag or anything that indicated that you were Jewish American?
No.
Okay.
The only thing is a dog tag said H out of the Hebrew.
Okay.
The dog tag.
So some Jewish soldiers who were captured during the war were treated differently than the common American POW would have been. Did you know anything about what was going on with the Holocaust while you were fighting in Europe? Did you know about the camps? Did you hear any rumors?
Yes, I saw camps. I saw bodies that were piled high at the camps. I had pictures, but I don't know what happened to them.
What about you, Joe?
Yes.
We went by the Polish camp. They had one for Polish people. And we didn't go in, but we saw them with their, I call them uniforms, but what they had to wear. But felt really bad, but nothing we could do about it. You know, we were busy with our own things.
But did you know what was going on to the Jewish people in Europe before you got into the war?
Yes,
Where did you first learn about what was going on?
in Brooklyn, New York, and a lot of Jewish people there, and they used to talk about it. And this was in 1940, 42, 43, even before then.
So there were whispers going around about what was going on in Europe and with the
rounding up the Jewish people.
They were rounding up the Jewish people.
Yes.
As a Jewish American fighting in Europe in World War II, did it give you any more incentive to fight, knowing what was happening to your race?
Kill them before they kill you, basically.
What was your reaction after the war when you found out that 6 million Jews were
Well, when
were killed?
When I first saw the pile of bodies piled high at the camp, that's how I realized what was going on.
And what was your immediate reaction when you saw that? Did you know they were Jewish?
I was in shock.
Did you know they were Jewish?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I was in shock.
Did you have any relatives who died in the Holocaust?
I did not.
How about you, Joe?
I didn't.
You did not.
No.
I did not.
When you first learned about the scope of the Holocaust and being a Jewish American soldier, did it make you feel better? Did you really realize what we were fighting for when you started to learn about the atrocities being committed by the Nazis?
I did, and it made you sick to your stomach knowing about it, but you still had to go out and do what you had to do.
And what happens when someone finds out that you were in World War II and that you served in Europe and they call you a hero? Are you comfortable with that word, hero?
I don't mind it. I don't mind it. I'm always talking about things anyway.
So you like to talk in general, so...
I wear my hat. I wear the hat because people stop and say thank you, and I start to talk to them. And you'd be surprised how many people I've met and conversed with.
And Leon, are you comfortable sharing your story from World War II?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Are you proud of having served in World War II?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
I'm not going to interrupt you, but I never told my children. I have
I'm married. You can interrupt me all the time. I get it at home.
5 children. I never told them anything that happened to me. Not until only 3 or 4 years ago when this all came out and you started to get memories. But they never knew I was in the Army, where I was, in Europe or here or there, anywhere. But now I've told them the whole story, and they're always asking me questions.
And they're better for it.
Yeah, and when I was wounded, I never told anybody back home because there was no sense of worrying people. I never told anybody.
Guys, thank you so much for joining us. It's really an honor to have you, and thank you for sharing your stories.
Pleasure meeting you again, and thank you.
Likewise.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. My honor.
Thank you.
And welcome back once again, everybody. We're joined by 2 more World War II veterans of the Jewish faith, Melvin Kahn and Samuel Buckler. And Mr. Kahn, I want to start with you. And you were in the United States Navy. You served in both Europe and the Pacific. Tell me a little bit about what your job was.
Well, my job was a gunner's mate. Each person was the armed guard. We were aboard the merchant ships that delivered the food and the materials to the boys are serving. And my job was to get the food and everything through. The submarines loved us.
In the North Atlantic, it was a very dangerous job.
Not only in the North Atlantic and the Asiatic theater, and also the Pacific theater. I served in the 3 areas, and I've made numerous amount of trips with convoys, and I've seen a lot of problems where ships got lost. They didn't get lost. They start out with so many ships, and were darn lucky to get 3/4 of them through. The submarines loved us.
I wanted to ask Sam, too, about your role with the U.S. Army Air Corps. What was your job?
I was in the 5th Air Force in the Pacific, and my job was at communications. I was in a top secret outfit, and our job was to listen in the Japanese Air Force. And we would go, like we would split up in the Philippines in 3 different islands. And we would be copying the Japanese Air Force. They always were in constant communication with their base so we could follow them easily. And we would set up on 3 different islands so we could triangulate on them. And we'd listen where they are, and an hour later we'd track them again. So at that point we knew what direction they were going, the speed they were going, and we would send up our Air Force fighters and knock them off every night. Eventually, we knocked the whole Japanese Air Force out.
There wasn't much left, was there? Were you guys aware, as Jewish Americans, and you had served in the European theater as well, and you were in the Pacific, but were you aware of what was going on in Europe with the concentration camps, with the killing, the mass murders going on?
Not really.
When did you find out what was happening over there?
Basically, almost after the war was over.
There were no rumors. I know you were in the Pacific, but what about you, Melvin? Were there rumors?
There was rumors around, and nobody believed it. It was impossible.
Did you guys experience any anti-Semitism in the armed forces?
Never.
Being Jewish, and were there any problems that ever came up?
As far as the armed guard, it was we all served proudly.
All your friends were joining up after Pearl Harbor and wanted to fight. What was the mood like in the country at that time following December 7th, 1941, when the Japanese had their sneak attack on Pearl Harbor? Did everyone want to join? Was there a real sense of patriotism?
There certainly was, as far as I
I
was
believe
concerned.
it was.
Yeah.
You know,
And why did you want to join the Army Air Corps specifically?
when I was a kid, I was always fooling around with the Morse code, and I made a keyboard and everything else. And so one of the tests, when they take you in, one of the tests is Morse code. And I did so well on it because I knew it. I did it for years. At that point, they sealed my fate, and they told me, figured out where I was going to go.
You were locked in. When someone comes up and calls you guys a hero and says, you know, Sam, you're a hero, Melvin, you're a hero, how do you respond to that?
I personally feel really proud of serving.
How
And
about you,
I thank
Sam?
them very much for them appreciating it.
Do you feel like
I don't feel like a hero, but I feel very good when people talk that way.
you feel as
It makes
though
me feel good.
if you feel as though you played an important role in something much greater than yourself?
Right.
I mean, you guys helped save the world, which is a pretty incredible thing to say.
Yep.
And I know you're going to be quiet about it now because you guys are so humble, but thank you.
Well, I personally never want to let people know what I've done because it brings back memories, and I've seen it all.
Tough memories.
Right?
Guys, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it, and thank you for all you have done and for our country, and you represent the best of America, so thank you very much.
Glad for inviting us.
My honor.
I thank you personally for inviting us.
Thank you to those Holocaust survivors and Jewish American veterans who joined us for this program to share their personal stories. As the great Edward R. Murrow always said, good night and good luck.